You aren't just stressed about money. Honestly, you are being neurologically hijacked. Let's dive right into this explainer and expose the hidden, systemic forces that are literally exhausting you, starting with what happens right inside your own head. Imagine taking a massive, high-stakes exam right after pulling an all-nighter. That's the actual biological cost of financial stress. Landmark research from Harvard and Princeton proves that living in financial scarcity puts such a heavy cognitive load on your brain that it drops your effective IQ by 10 whole points. 10 points! So those behaviors that might look like poor financial choices from the outside, they're really just predictable results of a mind trying to operate under crushing pressure. This triggers what researchers call financial survival mode, and when you're in this state, your nervous system essentially short-circuits. It starts treating a simple $12 monthly subscription like an absolute life-or-death existential threat. Your brain goes into a tunneling loop, narrowing your focus entirely on the immediate crisis just to get through the week. Long-term planning, that becomes basically impossible. You even start feeling ashamed of perfectly normal spending because your body's threat response is just constantly buzzing. So, moving into the first major piece of the puzzle, the hidden brain tax. You are lazy. You are neurologically hijacked. Look, we've all been handed this script, right? Study hard, get a good job, save a little bit of your paycheck, and you'll be totally fine. But as we dig into the data today, you're going to see exactly why that playbook, which, sure, worked beautifully decades ago, is fundamentally broken in the modern economy.
And that brings us to the Great Decoupling, the death of the one-to-one ratio. To really understand why you feel broke even when you're working hard, we have to look at the macro forces that completely decoupled your effort from your actual paycheck.
Check this out. During the post-war golden age, we're talking 1948 to 1979, if you worked harder, you got paid more. It was a near-perfect one-to-one relationship. Economic growth meant worker prosperity. But right around 1979, the game completely changed. Over the following decades leading up to today, American productivity skyrocketed by a staggering 90.2%, but median worker compensation? That's only crept up by about 33%. Basically, you are producing nearly double the value for your boss, but you're only seeing a tiny fraction of that hit your bank account. And it actually gets worse. Economists love to claim inflation is totally fine, but here's the catch. They are measuring the cost of a 1985 lifestyle against modern, suffocating costs. Just look at the cost of thriving index. Housing costs have exploded by 140%. Education, up 180%. Healthcare is up 90%. Meanwhile, median wages adjusted for inflation only bumped up 25%. Guys, this isn't just a random affordability crisis. This is a deliberately engineered erosion of the middle class. To really put this into perspective, let's look at a single number: 40 weeks. Back in 1985, a typical guy working full-time could fully support a family of 4 on just 40 weeks of his income. Just think about that kind of margin. That left roughly 20% of the entire year completely free to handle emergencies, cover other expenses, and actually, save and breathe. Fast forward to today, that exact same comparable worker works the entire 52-week year. And get this, still comes up 10 weeks short on covering just the absolute basics like food, housing, healthcare, transportation, and education. You are running as fast as you possibly can, but the treadmill is literally moving faster than your wages. Which brings us right to the Fiat Treadmill, and why your savings account is essentially a leaky bucket. Let's shift to the monetary level for a second to see how this builds into an invisible, silent tax on your labor. When central banks print new money to bail out the system, it inevitably devalues the cash sitting right in your pocket. Warren Buffett has this perfect, albeit slightly gross, way of describing it. He calls inflation a gigantic corporate tapeworm. And it's so accurate. That tapeworm is silently, constantly consuming your purchasing power and your hard-earned capital while it just sits there in a standard savings account, regardless of how hard you work to earn it. The mechanics behind this tapeworm come down to a brilliant 18th century economic principle called the Cantillon effect. Coined way back in 1755, this explains exactly why the rich get effortlessly richer while everyday workers stay stuck on that treadmill. And the core idea centers on one simple truth: the flow path of new money matters immensely. Think of it like standing right next to a running faucet. The people closest to the source get the fresh water first. Today, those are the asset owners, the banks and major investors. They receive the newly printed money first, which inflates the value of the stocks and real estate they already own. By the time that money finally trickles down to savers and wage earners, the prices for everyday goods have already been driven up.
The entire system is inherently rigged to reward those who allocate assets and punish those who simply save cash and trade their time for a wage.
Okay, enough doom and gloom. Let's talk about unplugging from the matrix, the microeconomic escape hatch. We've covered the heavy macro realities, but right here is where you take back control. The absolute crucial question is, how do you actually stop running on this treadmill and start buying back your freedom?
Well, first, we have to look at how we behave when we're stressed. Because we are so time-poor and cognitively exhausted, we fall back on what experts call convenience coping. We rely on delivery apps, multiple streaming services, and domestic outsourcing just to survive the long work week. And the danger here is that over time, these variable convenience costs crystallize into a permanent fixed overhead. They quietly drain the liquidity right out of your life.
To combat this without feeling completely deprived, you need to audit your life using the value matrix. You literally map out every single discretionary dollar onto 4 simple quadrants based on cost and joy. High joy, low cost things, like reading a great book or giving to charity, that's your sweet spot. But that bottom right quadrant, low joy, high cost, things like bank fees, unused boutique gym memberships, or expensive takeout that doesn't even taste good anymore, that is exactly where your freedom leaks away.
So here is your practical blueprint to unplug. Step 1. Audit your leaky budget using that matrix. Step 2. Stop the convenience coping and cut out that low-joy spending entirely. Step 3. Shift your nervous system from a scarcity mindset, which triggers that tunneling we talked about, to an abundance mindset. And finally, Step 4. Decouple your income from your hours. You need to acquire asymmetric assets. Things like index funds, digital products, or high-income skills that build wealth for you while you sleep.
Let's put some real-world numbers on this. In one specific case study from the Choose FI community, a family earning a good income mapped their budget. By just being brutally honest about what actually brought them joy, they easily found over $29,000 in annual leaks. 29 grand! All from low-joy expenses like unused subscriptions and eating out of pure exhaustion.
But here is the truly mind-blowing part about finding that 29 grand. Because of the compounding effect, plugging those specific leaks didn't just save them cash in the short term, it actually reduced their overall financial independence target number by over $700,000. That single, structured exercise massively accelerated their exit from the matrix, buying back years of their life.
By transitioning your habits, you move directly from the scarcity profile into the abundance profile. Instead of tunneling and dealing with a highly stressed nervous system, you become calm. You restore your cognitive bandwidth. You balance your cash flow toward truly joyful spending, and you regain total control with the liquid assets needed to weather absolutely any economic storm.
Look, most people aren't ready to be unplugged. Honestly, they will fight to protect the very treadmill that is exhausting them, simply because it's what they know. But you see the architecture of the cage. You understand the cognitive tax, the wage decoupling, the Candyland effect. You have the tools to escape. So I have to leave you with this question. Are you still blindly following a 1950s playbook in a 2026 economy? It is time to audit your script. Drop a comment below with your biggest aha moment from this explainer and tell us the very first low-joy expense you're cutting today. Let's get your cognitive bandwidth back and finally unplug from the matrix.